Hey, we have a very exciting guest right now. We have the CEO of Fire and Flower, Inc., Trevor Fencott. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So your company is a cannabis retailer, and just looking at your latest press release, is you guys have done 10 million in sales since legalization. Is that correct?
That's right. So we were open right on October 17th, and we had 5 stores open at that point in Saskatchewan and Alberta, and we've increased it to 9. But yeah, so that's we reached that within 90 days of legalization. So we're quite proud of that.
Okay, great. We'll get back to that in a second. But first, just to let our viewers know, currently, as of right now, you guys are a private company.
Yes.
Plans to change that?
Absolutely. So we announced that, I think, in the fall that we are doing an RTO with Cineport Acquisition Corp 2, which I believe has their AGM on the 30th, and then we will be trading shortly after that.
And the ticker symbol and the exchange? Will
be FAF, and it will be the Toronto Venture Exchange.
Awesome. We will definitely keep an eye out for FAF. Cool. So the whole retail space is a topic of curiosity for me. I've gone in these licensed producers' facilities and shot them top to bottom, and I get a sense for how the businesses work. But then once they're finished and the product goes into a container, it's sort of almost a mystery at that point. So what's that process like from your perspective? Just broadly first, and then I'll get at you with some.
So it depends on the province is the short answer. So for example, in Alberta, it would go from the licensed producer's warehouse, it would ship direct to the AGLC, the Alberta Liquor Gaming Commission there, into their warehouse, and then to us as a retailer. So we would order, each store in Alberta has to order from them directly and place an order for that store in particular. In Saskatchewan, though, for example, where we have 2 of our stores up and running, we also have a distribution center. So in Saskatchewan, we're allowed to be effectively the wholesaler. So we act as the AGLC or the AGCO in Ontario. So we buy directly from the licensed producer. So in that sense, we go out to visit all the LPs, and we look at their product. We do a rigorous evaluation on kind of their product quality and anticipated ability to supply us, because there is no margin for error. If we don't get supply in Saskatchewan, we will not have it. So there's no other appeal. And we have actually, by the way, never stocked out. So we have been very effective, I think, in getting product. And we also sell that product on, once we buy it from the licensed producer in Saskatchewan, we sell it on to the other independent retailers that are licensed in the province as well.
Okay, that's interesting. So in Saskatchewan, I guess, what was your perspective, like with the 10 million sales number, prior to that, before legalization occurred? Did you have any expectations, or were you sort of in the dark and not?
Well, we had some information. Like we went, the MJ Biz Fact Book had certain sort of aggregated stats from the US, but they're not tremendously useful because they're selling products that we can't yet sell in Canada, so things like extracts or vapable products. But they did indicate that it was around sort of $1,200 US per square foot across all their domains, which is basically any regulated domain there. So for us, we use that for planning purposes, but what we've found is that that the demand has far exceeded supply, and our stores were built under the the premise of cannabis for all Canadians. So when people hear that stat that 22% of Canadians consume cannabis, everyone sort of assumes that they know who that 22% is, like, oh, I know that guy. But it's actually 22% across, and I think that number's low, across all of our demographics. Like people who consume cannabis are judges, are police officers, are surgeons. Like it's really a very democratic substance. So we found certainly first day lineups, when we analyzed those, kind of like a core sample, we found that we were about 50% male-female, which I think surprised some people. We were 50%, plus or minus old and young in terms of demographic, and sort of white collar, blue collar mix was pretty even. So it was a very, very democratic spread. So we've seen the demand be very, very high.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was also curious, and I don't know how it changes from province to province, but your selection process in terms of what you want in the store, is it based on, who's producing the most, or do you just take everything, or how do you go through that? selection?
That's a great question. So for us, we are a cannabis retailer, but we're primarily a retailer. So you have to run a proper retail business. So I would be the cannabis person at the head. But for example, everyone at the company has come from regulated retail like Liquor Stores North America or Holt Renfrew or Canadian Tire. So this is a very sophisticated buying process. Like, to be a retailer, the margins are not going to be excessively high. So you have to really manage that. So our head merchant, which is a position in a retail company, comes to us as a Walmart buyer, right? So this is a very sophisticated, okay, what do we think the market's going to be, right?
Funny.
And yeah, exactly. And so these conversations are the same thing, which is reliability of supply counts on a balanced scorecard. Price is obviously an important factor. Quality of product. What we found is that, and we're just in the learning stages of the industry, so we will figure this out as an industry. But what we found is the provincial buying bodies are just ramping up on their cannabis knowledge. So, for example, for us, once we buy it, we recategorize it inside the store. So, for example, knowing what we know about licensed production, it's very difficult to produce a plant, a whole flower, at 22% and above THC. That's just very difficult. It means that plant has not been stressed out at all. No, the lights haven't been turned on at the wrong time. You've visited a lot of these facilities yourself. Yeah. It's gone almost perfectly, and that to us is a premium product. Versus what we're seeing is a pass-through where licensed producers are kind of sort of saying, hey, provincial buyers, this is a premium product, but we know that milled product is not going to be a premium product, or pre-roll product is going to be largely a blend. So this we're having to kind of recategorize it for our consumers, because our job is to be effectively the Whole Foods of cannabis, which is really about curating a very confusing customer product category, like health foods. I mean, you could endlessly read all day about what the keto diet and magnesium, like what do I need? So they do a good job of curating that for their health and wellness customers, and we need to do that in cannabis. So we need to take what's being offered on to purchase from the AGLC, or when we're in Ontario, the Ontario buying body, and they kind of recategorize it, saying, by the way, this is probably what a premium product actually is, and this is actually what a good, better, best. Here, we'll do our own work on explaining to our consumer how that breaks down.
How have you found branding? So from my point of view, I feel like our government has almost completely neutered the LPs. Yeah. But are you seeing branding effectiveness at all? Is it speaking to consumers? Are they asking for a certain brand? Is that working at all?
It's unfortunately, I think that is one of the things that we need to learn as a country. When we look at regulating how we talk about the product, obviously we want to protect children. We want to do it in a socially responsible way, and that's what Fire and Flower stands for. But you need to give consumers enough information to make an informed decision. And I feel like the way we've got it so far is over at one end of the spectrum. And what it's really doing is not allowing consumers to have an intelligent conversation about the product they're potentially purchasing, and it's certainly not allowing them to make proper distinctions between this and the black market. So in the absence of allowing licensed producers to talk about what might make their brand special or different, and there are differences between these brands, we instead find people coming in with a very low awareness of what an actual product would be from a licensed producer. They know licensed producer company names, but they don't really, very low awareness. I think we tracked it at one point. It was sub 1% awareness of an actual brand on an exit interview. So to us, they're coming in and they're either using an alcohol analog, which we would argue is kind of an appropriate way to look at this. We're regulating it in a similar fashion. This is not a narcotic anymore in that sense. It's much more like alcohol. So let's let people have a dialogue about cannabis the same way they would about wine in a vintages section of a wine store. So we see people coming in saying, well, when I thank you very much for your education. This is really helpful, Fire and Flower. Very happy that you're engaging with me. I drink Heineken though when I drink beer. Is there anything for me there? Or, for example, I want OG Kush, like a strain name as opposed to a product name. And I think that's potentially going to be a problem, because if people keep identifying it with black market or strain names, which are not verified and possibly not even accurate, who knows what a indica sativa or what OG Kush really is. Right. If you can't let people talk about a product that's being validated at an LP level and under a Health Canada system, it's going to be very difficult to displace the black market.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I were to come in, I'd probably ask for something high in CBD, but beyond that, you know, I wouldn't have much more to say. So.
Well, that's right. And if you think about it, even just CBD, there's extracted CBD, there's whole flower. The whole plant was a CBD plant that's being extracted. There's many things that we should be able to talk about along with brand that are important to consumers.
Yeah, and I mean, later this year, and I don't know if you have any more knowledge than the average Joe in terms of what is going to be allowed. So vapes is a huge market. I was kind of shocked that they didn't allow that from the jump. But is that something that's a catalyst for the retailer? Is there higher margins there?
I think so. I think anytime you are dealing with a product that is processed in some way, that is not a basic ingredient like wheat or barley, right. I think you're going to get higher margins, and you're going to allow retail to capture some of that. I think that, you know, candidly, I think that the decision to not include vapes in the first round of regulation, I think makes sense, because this is a different kind of product. And I think we have to be able to assure our customers that the same safety standards are being followed. And frankly, with another ingestion mode, whether it's glycol or medium chain triglyceride, like some science has to be done here. Certainly, I think to make our customers comfortable that, look, someone studied this. It's not just simply cannabis in another form. The processing has been studied. What's in it is being studied, and that it's going to be safe. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually, as a consumer as well as a parent, I'm actually happier that we are taking a little bit of time to figure this out before there's no rush. We should do it right rather than do it quickly. Okay,
fair enough. And you're a Toronto guy, so. Yep. And I got to ask you about the retail situation here with the lottery.
Yes.
How do you feel about that? I mean, you've got multiple businesses going.
Yes.
I'm sure a lot of research, the talent that you've acquired, the Walmart, all that stuff. Yep. The individuals, over 60% were individuals, not incorporated businesses. Do you feel like they have a chance to succeed? And just in general, what do you think about the decisions that were made in this province?
Well, I guess first I should say I grew up in Toronto. I actually reside in Oakville, which ironically is not lost to me that Oakville opted out of the cannabis. I would imagine that it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because I think that the ones that opt in are going to get the benefit of all the tax dollars that are pouring in there for training. But on the lottery, I think that it makes sense, and the way we look at it is it's like a beta test. And we've been in multiple markets now. We were here in Alberta, we started in Saskatchewan. Like we've really been kind of pioneers from the beginning in this part of the industry. And what we've seen is that the lottery, and this is not our first lottery, I think it's our third lottery. We had an Edmonton lottery, we had a Saskatchewan lottery, there's lots of lotteries. And what we've seen is it's a good way to start something on the fairness of opportunity part. But it's actually a very bad mechanism to ensure an outcome. So for example, in Saskatchewan, what we've seen is of the 51 licensed lottery winners, I think there's only 7 stores that are actually operating in the province. So it's very good to kind of allocate that opportunity, especially in a resource-constrained environment, which is why I think that what Ontario government did for the initial lottery makes a lot of sense, because we are in a supply-constrained environment. And it's better to get 25 stores up and running. If you don't have enough food, don't invite more people to your house for dinner, right? So that makes sense to me. But we view it as a beta test. And if that's the government's intention, then I think that that's the right way to do it. Whereas these 25, though, are going to need help. And we've obviously had discussions with many of the groups, just like our competitors. And in fact, probably everyone has had these kinds of discussions. People love lotteries. It's a very romantic notion of winning the lottery. But it's very difficult to set up a store, particularly in 9 weeks. And we would be challenged to do that. We actually obviously applied as well, and we picked our stores with the express purpose of, can we get this up and running, permitted, built out, an operational software system installed, point of sale system installed. There's a lot of moving pieces to a regulated retailer by April 1, and that's how we made our decision. So we look forward to the opportunity to helping lottery winners get to that point, first of all, on time, but also I think what the Ontario government needs to maybe look at from here is how do you make sure that once they're up, let's assume you can get them up in time, that they're run in a compliant way. And that's really the challenge. So for example, it is non-trivial to be able to balance your inventory at the end of a month to a regulated cannabis standard. It's not like I lost 4 chocolate bars, okay, well, I guess, oops, we won't do that again. It's like you lost 5 grams of something somewhere. You need to account for that. So, and then of course selling to minors, and I think that the perennial problem with operators that are sole proprietors is going to be the potential infiltration of the black market. It's very difficult to see that if you have groups, as we've seen sort of out west, that are maybe waiting for the supply issue to stabilize, and they're paying rent, and they've taken out the second mortgage, and this is their kind of this is their next career move. It's difficult to underestimate the kind of the temptation to maybe engage with the black market, and for us, that's simply not the case. We're well financed. We're we're long-term players, and I guess that's how we look at the Ontario market from a long-term view.
Right, that makes sense. Okay, so just very briefly, what are you excited for in the coming weeks and months?
Well, I think in the coming weeks and months, we're very excited about. I mean, we're starting to see the supply issue ease up, which is great, and I think that we're going to see a lot more growth in Alberta, which is why when I'm asked a question about Ontario, I think it's responsible to have the lottery as your beta test, but we have so much wood to chop in the West. Like we're a Western-focused company because that's where the opportunity is at the moment. So for us in Alberta, we have 37 sort of license applications in. We have 7 of these stores licensed. We have 7 selling cannabis, but we've been building out. And this is a when supply comes online, not if it ever does. I mean, we all agree that as a country, we're going to have a 5 times oversupply of cannabis, depending on who you talk to, a year or 2 years, but it's going to happen. So we've been continuing to build. So what I'm very excited about is the possibility of stores that we have built out in Alberta coming online and becoming revenue generating assets. Obviously very, very excited about Ontario opening up and the possibility of working with some of these lottery winners to help, I think, establish a benchmark of compliant, socially responsible regulated cannabis sales.
Okay, awesome, Trevor. Well, we'd love to have you back, especially when you're up and running in a public company and we can pour over the CDAR documents. And
yes.
That'll be great. So thanks for joining us, and
thank you for
hope
having
to have
me.
you back soon.
Awesome, thanks.